Good morning everybody and welcome in to another custom set video here on the channel where today we are going to be taking a look at Z0095, a set that has been hyped up a lot by me, so hopefully it lives up to the expectation. And without further ado, it is Z0095, the Champions art piece, which is a Lego art set, sort of under the art theme but also under the Zelda theming, for 18 plus with 2,326 pieces. No figures because this is an art set, and it's transforming the Champions photograph, which you receive at the end of the Breath of the Wild DLC, into Lego form. So we're going to take a closer look up, point out some of the unique building techniques that went into this, why I thought this was a perfect choice, and the styling and stuff that we've used in this model. So without further ado, let's have a quick read of the description and then get straight into it. Display memories of your time in Hyrule on your wall with the brand new LEGO The Legend of Zelda Champions art piece. With a fully buildable model recreating the iconic pose of the champions at the end of Breath of the Wild's downloadable content, this art piece shows everybody how much you loved your time in Breath of the Wild Hyrule. With two mountable wall hooks, this can be displayed either stood up or alongside a wall, and features intricately recreated details from the costumes of the four main races of Hyrule and its Hylian princess and her knight. Okay, let's open up the box and see what we get. No bags to take a look at today because this is a little bit of a different one, but really this model is made up of 15 of the art plates. That's 5 rows of 3, which for reference is actually the same size as the Milky Way Galaxy art that launched earlier this year, and also a lot of the other standard arts. It's using the layered plate technique, which we've more recently seen on the Mona Lisa, as well as sets such as the Galaxy art, the Rolling Stones, and even to a little bit of an extent Starry Night as well. But obviously most of its inspiration is taken from the Mona Lisa. This is in contrast to the original art style, which was launched with the art theme in 2020, which we had Iron Man and the Sith art, where they were all using 1x1 studs, and this was boring. Now back in the original draft for the custom set showcase, which is largely untouched, the art set that was going to happen and still is going to happen was a dots-based art, just like this original wave. However, that's really boring, and it wasn't until we started seeing them sort of diversify and really play around with the shapes in the medium that the idea for this one sort of hit me. And it became very much a case of what are the things iconic enough in the Zelda franchise that could warrant a model like this. And well, the Champion's portrait came to mind because it's already something that a lot of fans tend to have on their wall, or a smaller version of it, and I believe it came in one of the premium editions of Creating a Champion as well. So a Lego brickbuilt version of that makes all the sense in the world. It's an iconic moment that uses a variety of intricate techniques to build up the picture. It's a fun building experience, and it recreates such an iconic moment that so many people love and have such a strong attachment towards the champions. To me, this is a more interesting Lego product than, say, 3D sculpt of the 4 champions. Not as figures, of course I would prefer them as figures mostly, but like in comparison to having like what they just did with C-3PO, where they have giant statues of like what First 4 Figures does, really, I suppose is what I'm saying. So really it was inspiration from the Mona Lisa to try and see if I could make this work. And you'll notice that unlike the Mona Lisa, there's a lot more studs on show here. The majority of this comes in Daruk's fur, and this is actually deliberate to try and get a little bit more texture involved. One could argue that I should be adding all kinds of tiles to change it up, and maybe we will in the future, but currently it's been done like that to represent sort of the fur. And then similarly for Rivali's feathers, we're using more of a studded angle, whereas aspects like his beak have more minimal studs, and same with Zelda's hair and Link's hair, which are both making great uses of wedge plates. Now, how this is built is on a layered version. Most of the shapes are created by comparing how layers of different plates in different colors interact with each other. One of the great examples of this is down on Breath of the Wild Zelda's sleeve, where you can see 4 different colors, just making use of the 2x6 wedge in dark blue, but you've got a 3x6 wedge underneath to show the yellow trim of her dress, followed by a 1x4 wedge, which has obviously a slightly shallower angle, or steeper angle actually, but that's in dark orange this time to recreate the shadow coming down from her arm. And we're also making great use of the 3D, as you can see on her torso here. It comes outwards and then bands back inwards for the neck. The heads, of course, were one of the more interesting parts to design, and I took a lot of cues from the Mona Lisa. Believe it or not, this model uses absolutely 0 recolors, which one is somewhat limiting and had to compromise on some of the shapes, but it does mean that this model is buildable. So I suppose that's my big question for you guys today is, should I build this model in real life? Personally, I think it would be a stunning display piece, and I really love how it came out, but more on that later. As I mentioned, the faces were the hardest part, of course, due to capturing the eyes. And you'll notice here that our 3 humans have no representation of the eyes. Daruk has eyes just by the nature of the Goron eyes. Rivali has the eye, but it's unprinted, and Mifa has the dark spot where her eye would be. Side note, I really love the triangle usage there for her little pink nose. I think that's really cool. And the reason I chose to remove eyes is because I couldn't find a way that I liked that didn't look really creepy. You're hopefully seeing on screen now one of the just insane eye patterns I tried, and it looked terrifying. I also did try replicating Lego eyes, and that didn't work for me either. So if you are an artist and you think you have a suggestion for me, I am more than open to it, because I would love to do that alongside the Triforce prints for Zelda's outfit, and some of the other details that would be printed in a set like this, like Daruk's nostrils. Speaking of, there were so many unique shapes and things to capture that had to come across in absolutely different ways. You'll notice that across the different characters we have grill tiles being used to represent fine jewellery, or on Mifa's Zora crest is using this Ninjago weapons pack which came in flat silver. Link's torso was also quite fun because we had to use these bar elements here to represent the stitching which makes the sword that goes across his chest. And side note, while we're talking about Link, you'll also notice a little bit of shading on his cheek. This was the same as it was used for Zelda in order to mimic depth, and this was also used on Urbosa to make the arm that she has across her chest in the real picture come in front of her shoulder, which makes her shoulder look like it's not only shadowed by the hair but also by the arm being in front of it. Layering again, of course, is crucial here. You can see how the angles make it look like Link is being shoved backwards, like they were being compressed in the photo, which is one of the big things, because when I first started the project I genuinely didn't know if it was going to be possible, mostly due to the fact that it's really hard to work out, mostly due to the organic shapes and sort of crumpled nature of the picture, which means that all the characters are moving and flowing and aren't just straight on in profiles. It was very much a test and see process, and I got to a certain point where I realized that this was absolutely going to work and look fantastic while doing it. Specifically, the test model I used was for Zelda at the front, because I knew she would be the highest, most forefront element, and the actual test for her was the sleeve down at the bottom. This was done by importing an image into Studio, which for those of you that don't know is a newer feature that they added recently to add reference images that makes me very happy, and I scaled it up to be the same size as the rough canvas size I knew I wanted, and then I just set about overlaying plates to recreate shapes and so on, taking a couple of liberties wherever needed to be, or to simplify some shadows and shapes on this detailed canvas. But over time it just built up, and then Zelda herself was only about 4 or 5 plates thick, but then of course when you add layers behind it, the whole model ends up being about 3 bricks thick, which you can see here with this raised up stand, which was inspired by the Starry Night set, of course. You'll also notice that I'm trying to use that depth to my advantage on characters like Rivali, who is probably the most flat apart from Daruk potentially, who literally sits just like 1 stud above the background. But Rivali's hand here on the left comes really far into the foreground, and you can see that recreated here using a variety of slopes and edges with his fingers that really add a lot of depth here. It's all about trying to make the best use of Lego shapes and wedges to recreate what we see in game. And I think that is mostly executed the best in the central 3 champions, specifically in Urbosa and Link's angles and Zelda's definition on her dress, which makes great use of having a stud and tiled surface to recreate the sort of white stitched corset that goes underneath the rest of her dress. There's also, of course, a lot of jumper stud work, offsetting things like that 3x3 round tile that's on her arm as well, and then of course Mifa's grilled necklace, which is only made possible by grills being on a variety of jumper plates. Surprisingly, one that wasn't mostly on jumper plates was actually Rivali's face, who was intricately made up by layering over wedge plates. I was specifically quite pleased with his eye because it's actually quite a detailed shape that has a lot of different colours in it. And of course, if we added a print, it would probably look a lot better, and then would actually have the accurate detail as well. And you've even got the hair braids coming out of the back, which look utterly fantastic. Layering Daruk's chain, I also wanted to make a specific effort to make sure that the chains actually went underneath each other, so you'll notice that half of each chain link is raised up above the other and the other half goes underneath it to show them threaded through each other. And one of the hardest elements to get right was definitely Urbosa's shoulder pads, just so that they had that level of detail, because they're made up of like 5 different colours in the original, and then to slim them all together. And you'll notice, of course, we also have the earring underneath her hair as well, half exposed using a minifigure lifesaver piece. Whole variety of different parts used here to great effect. Daruk's mouth was kind of one of the easier parts, strangely enough. Not so much his forehead, but I knew what I wanted to do for his eyes. And I also had a perfect idea for what to do for his mouth, which was using the new 2.5 sort of round tile that was introduced in the Snow White set and has since appeared in white. The only colours that aren't currently available are the ones that are coming in the Mona Lisa, and I've checked that all of these parts are coming out on October 1st with that set, and they are. So that's wonderful, which means in the new year, if you guys think it's a good idea, we can start building this in real life, and I can hopefully have this displayed on my wall. So as I mentioned and alluded to a little bit earlier, the reason I chose this set is because I think it sums up the art theme's mottos best, at least in a Legend of Zelda concept. It was always going to be the main characters and always going to feature Link. In fact, my original plan was just to have dot art of Link, Zelda and Ganondorf, and then the three in one aspect is you combine them together to make a Triforce. We may still do that at some point, but to be honest, I think it would also be fun to have a 3D model in this style of Link in his green outfit, where it's all about the depth of field. And to be honest, there's not many other Zelda things that I think fit the art motto very well. I mean, there's a lot of iconic imagery, but we've already done a wall-mounted Hylian shield, which again is sort of the closest Zelda art set that I could see us getting. But outside of that, there's no real characters that aren't featured here that are iconic enough. There's no real iconography that people like to put on their walls. Now, obviously, there are niche scenarios where people will put anything on their walls, but as far as like a big Zelda merch that they sell to put on walls, yeah, I think this is the biggest like poster outside of main game art, which I have something coming for, I will say. You'll be seeing those relatively soon. And I really think that the depth style sort of lends well to it, and it was just thinking about that combination and seeing how things would turn out that led us to this revelation that this would look absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys agree that it does look great. I should have also mentioned the background here as well, which is made up using layering plates. This is a technique that was completely stolen from the Mona Lisa build, which I think works really, really well and adds an extra level of depth, which I really, really enjoy because it kind of looks like just a Hyrule Field scenario. So yeah, I think it's a perfect choice for this. I see people with this print hung up, which just makes it make a lot of sense. And as you can see, it's just designed in a fairly simple layered pattern. And apart from that, there's not too much to talk about. I would like feedback based on what you guys think about it, but also on the eye debate and what you think it does. Yes, I realize that not having faces definitely looks a little weird, but they literally just included it as an official option in the Mona Lisa set. And to be honest, I think it would have looked creepier with it. And you can still tell who it is with this mix of plate and tiles. Like, it's instantly recognizable. And I love that little bit of 3D. It even doesn't look too bad when you lay it down, although things do look a little wonky. Anyway, the depth here is one of my favorite aspects. It truly was a moment of realizing whether I could, not so much if I could execute it. I genuinely didn't know if this was possible. So I'm so pleased with how it came out, and hopefully you guys agree with that. CSS wise, it was one of the quickest development times from getting the idea, having been completed in 3 weeks afterwards. However, the actual development cycle of how long I spent on the model far exceeds that of normal. I basically binged it over some time off from work in a very short amount of time, but I was doing it for like 7 hours a day for like a good 3 weeks. So it was a really rewarding design experience seeing it come together with this layered up version. But yeah, I just love it. I can't stop staring at it. I just can't stop talking about it. Let me know what you guys thought. It's obviously not a normal custom set. We much prefer the play sets, but should this be part of my convention display kit, it's going to be a little pricey to sort out, but I think it'd be worth it to have on the wall, right? Anyway, let me know what you thought down below, and I will see you guys again next Friday. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.